Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Diegelman, and I'm joined by my colleague, John Zimmerman.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about the newest SDK in Fiserv's emerging capability set. So our firm, Fiserv, is rather well known for financial processing, and in the financial services industry in general. The unit that we represent is the e-payments unit, and that unit processes over $1 trillion on an annual basis across roughly 30 billion digital transactions, so tremendous scale. From an associate standpoint, we're spread out across the globe, roughly 23,000 associates, and a significant number of financial patents related to technology in our space. You probably know Fiserv without necessarily knowing us. What I mean by that is, if you've used your mobile phone to check a bank balance, or to make a person-to-person payment, or to pay a bill online, it's highly likely that we are involved in that transaction. And it's that infrastructure that we have sitting underneath the SDK set that we're here to talk about today. Specific to money movement, we move money in a variety of ways. The traditional automated clearinghouse, as well as the card rails, and then some of the more emerging rails, such as the clearinghouse and our own internal Now network that connects banks bank to bank. So as I mentioned, I'm excited that we're here to talk about something new, SDK related, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So the problems that we're trying to solve with this SDK set are those that merchants and corporates have faced for some time. And for those who need to collect funds or accept funds from consumers, that's what this SDK set is positioned for. So the first one, as you may know, it often costs a lot of money to move money. And we believe that the scale and the infrastructure that Fiserv has in place already that is part of the plumbing of the financial system in the US today can be leveraged in this regard to create a meaningful advantage for developers and for corporates and for merchants who need to collect funds from consumers. In addition, as digital payment volume grows and continues to grow in a somewhat linear fashion, so do attempts and events related to risk and to fraud. And the capabilities that we've put together that the thousands of banks across the United States leverage to look into and resolve and better understand risk and fraud related events will be available to the developer community and to their merchant and corporate customers. Finally, business models are changing to a point where 10 years ago, things like Netflix didn't exist. Things where you would subscribe on a regular basis really weren't there. Today, recurring and subscription models have flourished across virtually every industry, whether consumer to business or business to business. And that brings with it a set of payment and billing needs that our SDK and our underlying infrastructure, we think, can help with. So with that background, I'm going to let John take you through the details of our newest capability.
Thanks, Paul. Hi. All right. So today, we're here to actually announce a new product. It's called Payment SDK. It's a collection of APIs for the purpose of integrating Fiserv's powerful money movement capabilities into an online software solutions. So essentially, solutions that you as developers would create. We're utilizing the experience and high volume capacity that underlies the Fiserv networks that we're using in banks today. We're leveraging Fiserv's money transfer licenses across the country. We are deploying modern REST APIs and widgets to tap into this powerful pipeline that banks are using today already. In addition, it's not just APIs. We bring security, we bring compliance, we bring multiple payment options with multiple speeds to allow developers to create payment acceptance solutions tailored to your needs and to your market needs to better fit your customers' marketplaces. So Fiserv is known actually as an innovative leader in the industry. Now we invite you to join us on this journey as we bring innovative payment capabilities to the market. In April, we're going to start, when we release our product officially, we'll provide access to our developer portal. This is where you'll come to access the documentation. You can find the Swagger documentation to the APIs there. You can actually get your API keys, access to the sandbox. It's also where, as a business, you'll register to become a developer. You'll submit your business application through that portal as well. So we're going to be providing access in April to our APIs. This release will also include access to the tools, widgets, and APIs associated with our Verify Now product, which is important for fraud and risk mitigation. So you ask, why ACH first? Well, it's a tried and true payment form. It's hard to ignore the fact that ACH is out there. A large portion of the population is bank-based. And it's getting renewed interest from businesses as they're struggling with the traditional costs of taking payments that have currently been popular lately. And of course, there's changes afoot with ACH. There's lots of exciting changes around how ACH is being looked at and the timing that goes along with the settlement of ACH transactions. And we're right along with that flow. So we'll be including both standard speed and ACH, standard speed ACH, which is really that 2 to 3 day model, as well as next day capabilities, along with basic recurring transaction processing in the API set for April. Here. So we plan to be aggressive in our roadmap. So as we get to the summer, we'll be enhancing our APIs to support debit card. It's interesting to learn that if you look at some markets that are actually taking debit cards, taking cards today, over 50% of those card transactions can be debit card transactions. So when you look at that type of a transaction flow, it's not necessarily a traditional credit card. It's probably a debit card being processed as a credit card. And there's opportunities in that, in how that transaction gets routed to help perhaps save some cost in routing it to other networks, such as the debit card networks or debit card rails specifically. If you've heard of the Excel network, you're already familiar with the Fiserv property. That's one of our businesses. So we have some experience already in the debit card space. We also have the ability from that point to route to the other debit card networks, whether it's Star, Pulse, et cetera, and also be able to take a logoed card, like a Visa or MasterCard logoed card. So we have some significant experience to apply to this problem. In talking to the market, we also learned that there's a significant trend going on around subscriptions. Paul kind of alluded to it. Businesses are using subscriptions as ways to repackage their products, to expand into different markets, to retain existing customers. And they do this by essentially reducing the price point for entry into their product. It also steadies out their stream of revenue, so they get a much more predictable revenue flow. So they really like the flow, the effect of having a subscription business. And interestingly enough, I've been with some companies where their investors really love it too, because it adds a level of predictability into what their revenue streams look like out into the future. Then coming soon, we'll be looking at integrating into our Now network. And this is actually an important step for us, because the Now network provides us with some great enhancements or capabilities, and very innovative capabilities, into adding to the Payment SDK product set. And that means providing capabilities of connecting into real-time ACH, where we connect it directly into bank cores. If you didn't know it, Fiserv is usually one of those companies providing that bank core. So we have connectivity into a lot of bank cores. It also provides us with the ability to do peer-to-peer transactions. And if necessary, makes sense, we'll be also adding the capability to process traditional credit cards on those in that same network. Now let's take a little closer look at what the user experience might look like with the Payment SDK product. So as a tool set, it's really defined by the developer as to what they think is best for their solution. So it's based upon the business, appetite for risk, what kind of user experience they want, how much friction do they want in that process? Do they want it to be relatively strict in the security the mitigation that's taking place? Or is it something that maybe the transaction is really low value, but you want to get the customer through that process very quickly, so you want to reduce the friction. So understanding the appetite for risk, the user experience you want to develop, whether or not the user is actually in session or not during that transaction process, or the evaluation of that transaction is also important. Developers can choose to implement identity verification tools. It may not be appropriate in all instances, but you want to ensure that the user who's creating that transaction is who they claim to be. And we provide some tools to do that, whether it's a rule-based filtering, device profiling, challenge questions, et cetera. So we provide those kind of capabilities right within the tool set we're including in this product. Of course, then you have to collect the KYC information of the customer and understand who the payment's going to go to. So we're providing APIs to create a customer profile and capture the account information, tokenize the information on the account if necessary. And when capturing the account data, you may need to validate that consumer so that they actually have access to that account. And we, again, provide tools to do that within the Verify Now product, whether it's going to be the traditional micro deposits or trial deposits, or if you want to use a more immediate verification and using a real-time solution, as well as some additional options we have as we move forward. Of course, then you need to package up the whole transaction and create the payment. And of course, get it onto the Fiserv network, and that's the core API, of course, is the Create Payment API. Once the transaction hits our side, into our network, we're going to score that transaction for risk and take appropriate action. So we are risk scoring these transactions. And then, of course, there's the whole regulatory and compliance side of this. We do AML checks. We apply any anti-money laundering checks, making sure that it's compliant with the money transfer license requirements of each of the states and do the state reporting. So that complexity pretty much stays behind the curtain, and as a developer, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But we'll give you some guidelines as well there. So the processing of the actual money is based upon a good funds model, and I said we offer, from an ACH perspective, out of the gate, that 2 to 3 day model, as well as next day. And we've got some exciting options as we move forward. Just one example. This is just one example of the process. It can be sort of pick and choose, depending upon how much you want to expose to the user. A lot of these things happen in the background. They don't necessarily get exposed to the user, but they actually do take place. And they happen, obviously, in real time through the APIs. OK, so who might be considering using this technology? Where are we pointing this at? So our target markets are really businesses who are processing high-volume transactions. Those are like healthcare, and we're looking at markets that initially, since our focus is on ACH, we want to look at some of those markets who traditionally may have been using a check to pay for their transactions. Housing, education, healthcare, where they're looking to modernize. They still want to stick to that low-cost transaction process that they're familiar with, and perhaps even the consumers are traditionally want to be taking that out of their regular monthly payment as opposed to extending credit on it and paying interest. So they might have been using checks before and they want to continue to use something like that. So they're modernizing to just a digital platform to take that and make that easier to accept those payments. But it's still based upon a bank account debit. In addition, there are subscription services like music and video, newspapers, magazines. And again, very subscription heavy, and we're going to be very specific in providing some very capable APIs for subscription processing. And that comes along in that summer time frame release, where we add subscription, very robust subscription APIs for creating a transaction specific to that need. And of course, we're not ignoring startups. It's a great fit for startups. Startups are often the businesses that are out there disrupting markets, but they're bringing along innovative capabilities and new technology or modern technology to create that disruption. And we think they're a great fit with Fiserv as what we have to offer in our perspective on the markets. So why should you adopt this solution? What's in it for you? And what are the benefits essentially we're delivering here? Well, just like I said, it's easy to integrate. It's API-based. We're using modern REST APIs. We're providing UI widgets where appropriate. We're going to be translating into specific SDKs, probably starting out with 5 languages to start out with, so that the libraries for the SDKs will be available this summer to help you quickly connect into our Fiserv network. You're going to get industry-leading risk and fraud protection, thanks to the bank-level account verification and identification tools included in Verify Now. It lets you control the user experience and take on the amount of risk that you're comfortable with from a business perspective. And you're going to have lower cost options for taking payments, which means higher profits. So as you offer, perhaps you offer the alternative of a bank-based or ACH or virtual check type transaction, you offer a lower cost option in taking that payment, and that translates into higher profits or greater value in the payment made by the consumer. You're going to get faster, more reliable payments with standard or next day payments. And as you move to that instant transaction perspective, it becomes a very interesting dynamic between why businesses choose to use a credit card versus why they choose to perhaps look at now ACH as an option, where instantly the funds in that very same moment go from the consumer to the merchant, as opposed to the traditional merchant instance on a credit card where they're having to wait a couple days for those funds to actually hit their account. It provides a sense of security to know that they have funds and they're willing to then hand over the goods or service to the consumer without having to worry about some of the traditional problems around fulfillment. You're also going to be able to give your consumers more payment options, decreasing the barriers to purchase, whether it's today or in the future. And then finally, you're going to have a sense of confidence in the fact that Fiserv is behind this. We're a proven network. We've been out in the market space supporting consumers and businesses behind the scenes on an ongoing basis, as Paul said, $1 trillion a day, or $1 trillion a year, sorry, supporting customers on an ongoing basis with all the compliance pieces already taken care of. Paul, you have anything to add?
Super. So why don't we wrap up? We're just about ready for questions. So again, thanks very much for coming to Harris. We're excited to take this infrastructure that we've created for thousands of banks and billions of transactions and open it up to the developer community to leverage for different business needs. So with that in mind, John, why don't...
Looks like we got some questions here. Does Fiserv's SDK enable merchants to collect payments outside the U.S.? Currently, it is a U.S.-based model. We're leveraging the whole idea here is essentially to leverage the technology and assets and capabilities we have in supporting U.S. banks today. So that is essentially the same parameters in which the geographies and regions we're working with here. Next question. Which processing platforms are you integrated with across the globe? Again, we're going to head that one off the pass. We're very U.S. focused at this point. What other payment alternative methods are available via the SDK? Some of these we might consider competitors, so we're not offering them. We're very focused on our products and services. That doesn't mean as a developer you can't integrate those to your solution, but those aren't offerings that we will be offering. Next question. When are you launching support for real-time ACH settlement?
You missed one.
Oh, sorry.
You missed the debit cards.
When you say debit cards, do you mean issuing debit cards or originating payments to from debit cards? It would be the accepting payments using a debit card. Okay.
So for today's conversation, we're talking about payments coming from a debit card. However, we've already exposed a set of APIs to the corporate community to move money to debit cards.
Yeah.
So that's been in existence for a couple of years at this point. So it's just a different product.
And if you're interested in issuing of debit cards, that's another Fiserv business.
Right on.
When are you launching support for real-time ACH settlement? Will it coincide with stage 2 or 3 of the real-time payment initiative? We're trying to get ahead of that, actually. No, we have some capabilities that go beyond that, the initiatives from stage 2 and 3. If we can get there by this fall, that's our goal. It may take us a little longer, but right now that is our goal, to get to that point. Next one, do you have good funds model for payments? And that is exactly the model that we're using for ACH is good funds, whether it's the standard 2 to 3 day or the next day model. Do users need to be members of banks that are Fiserv? And the answer is no.
The answer is no.
It looks like we're out of time. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.